Welcome, folks. I am Ravi Tangri, and this is the first of a series of lives I'm going to be doing throughout September, every weekday at noon Eastern Time, 1 o'clock Atlantic Time, for business owners, professionals, CEOs, on how do you figure out what your next is, what's next for you. This is a turbulent year, and how do you find your way forward when the rules are changing every single day? So this series is called What's Next? How do we figure it out? I'm going to be bringing you some material. I'm going to be bringing some guests in who have some amazing insights to help you move forward. And what this is focused on, I've discovered that there are 3 pillars for success in this crazy time. And most business owners and professionals focus on one, maybe, and sometimes 2, and usually completely forget the third, which is really the key to moving forward. And that's what this series is really going to be focused on. How do you build your anchor? How do you build your foundation so that you can move yourself and your organization and the rest of your life forward? So what we're going to be doing, if you have any questions or comments on this, just put it into the comments. I will be able to see them as we're going through, and be able to bring that into the conversation. So share your thoughts, your insights, your questions with me, and that way I can customize it a whole lot more for you. Okay, so I mean, these are pretty crazy times. 2020 is turning out to be a swear word for a lot of people. It seems to be one thing after another, and it's a real challenge, really tough if you are running a business to be able to find your way forward, because it's not just the business, because you're doing things for your family, your kids, looking after parents, often your friends, the community. There's so much going on that it seems that everybody's often coming to you, and you don't have a chance to breathe. And then something else happens and you take that on, which you can't do, but it's sometimes it can feel almost like you're sabotaging yourself. And we're going to get into that, because in a weird way, sometimes we do. And I'm going to show you as we go along how to defuse some of that self-sabotage, so that you can create some healthy boundaries, so that you can start to move forward. So if you're coming in, as I said, just add your comments, your thoughts, your insights into the comments, and your questions, and we'll move forward. What I'm going to do today is really give you a foundation of those 3 pillars before we dive more deeply into the specific how-tos, okay, and some techniques and some ways to find your footing when everything's changing. Because when you are being pulled in 1,000 different directions, you feel like you can't give anyone enough. And yet there's more that's pulling you. And quite often your downtime may be just vegging in front of Netflix, trying to dig into some Haagen-Dazs and just completely tune out the world. That's about all the time that you get. What this is about finding ways to replenish yourself so that you can be there for yourself, for your business, and for those that you serve, and for others in your life. So what are these 3 pillars? Let's dive into that. Okay, so if I was to take a look at, grab a few markers. If I was to take a look at, some things here where the tech has just stopped working, but that's okay. We will work with that. I'm going to bring this over here. And And if you were to take a look at what we'd call success, okay, that's built on three distinct pillars. And as I said, most people focus maybe on one, uh, sometimes two, but will often lose the third, which really is what holds it all together and drives everything else. So the first thing, if you're thinking about a business, one of the biggest used words and often overused and abused words in what's happening now is pivot. What the heck is pivot? Pivot doesn't mean you don't go do something completely different. It's really about being strategic, about finding out what are your strengths, and then how do you leverage those strengths in new ways in this environment to create value. So the key here, I call this pillar strategy. But it's innovative strategy. How do you maybe switch around if you can't bring people into your workplace, if you can't find ways to get to them? How do you still create value? And it's about really not starting with what's out there, but starting inside. What are your strengths? What is it that you're good at, your people are good at, you excel at? Then how can you leverage those in new ways to be able to move forward? Now, I've been doing strategic planning for 30 years or so, and most of mine has been, it's interesting that everyone is having to pivot now, but most of my work has been for clients when the rules have changed and we have to reinvent what we're doing. And the framework that I use, there's many, but that I use is breakthrough facilitation process called Genesis, which is based on the creative strategy of Walt Disney himself. It's a really simple three-step process that lets you take your strengths, find new ways to make it fit the environment. But you've got to stay true to who you are. You don't just switch to doing some other business. The second thing which has popped up is engagement online. A lot of people thought, okay, we have to work from home, which is really interesting. You ask about pivot. If you had asked people in December, what do you think about moving your whole team to work from home? They said, no way, impossible, cannot be done. Guess what? It can. And now a huge proportion of organizations are saying, you know what? Maybe we don't need the office. Maybe we can do this on a longer term basis. But they were forced into it. So what that says to me is that there's a lot more that you can do, which comes back to the innovative strategy. But the key is when your people aren't there, when your customers aren't there, when your clients aren't there, how do you keep them engaged? You can't just move all your stuff on let's just do a Zoom webinar and talk at people. I mean, that's where, people turn into zombies. It's not, you fry their brains. You have to change how you do things. One of the things I found, it's interesting, a lot of my friends are speakers and who are used to, being on stage, keynotes, that's the main part of their business. I do that some, but I'm a facilitator at core. And, one of the biggest challenges for them has been, if you really want to engage people, you can't talk at them for 45 minutes. You've got to really go, what's the core of my content? How do I switch it around? And you really throw out about half the content and bring in more ways to engage people. The other thing is there are different platforms, different ways to be able to pull people in. And if people are engaged, they're going to stay with you. Typically you're going to have very, very low uptake on conferences, on meetings that are not required. And you're going to have a lot of disengagement. It's going to be like the old conference calls. People are going to be having it on, but maybe have their camera off and they're working on the email and listening to it in the background. you've really got to engage. And one of the things I've started doing now, because of this, is producing actual online conferences and meetings. We've been able to have like 94% retention and engagement through a conference online. So there are ways to do that, but it is a different set of strategies, and some people are looking at that. But if you look at this as holding this up, you can see you've got sort of a diving board. This is not success. This is not a solid foundation for success. This could really tip. And the critical piece that almost everybody is missing in these turbulent times is this is about that actually holds the rest of this up is about leading you. Because if you are the business owner, if you are running the organization, the buck stops with you. Everyone is looking at you. You may be supporting others, you may be doing things for others, but what are you doing to replenish yourself? Because people went through a lot of caca over the last several months, and they needed support. They needed ways to adapt to these new ways. And in the end, that would come from who they report to, and that winds up with you. Well, who do you look to, especially if you're the owner? It's not there. Plus, you've got your friends, you've got your family that are trying to adapt, and they are, and if you've been strong, if you're always the strong one, guess who they turn to? You. And so that takes more on you and you and you. And how do you find the resources to fill your well so that you can be there for others? That's the real challenge. This is what people miss because they get locked into how do we operate, and that's a downward spiral. That just, you just go down, 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 and you get lost. You will burn yourself out. What happens here is often if you're not looking after yourself, because you've had a stress reaction as well. There's a lot of people actually that's finding through all of the things that happened in 2020, basically some develop PTSD. It's been traumatic from all of these changes and the fears and all of that. Plus there's so much more going on right now that's muddying the whole field. What are you doing to deal with your stuff and be able to work through it and be there so that you're resourceful for yourself, for everybody else? And that's the key here, is if you can build that resource base in you, you've got a whole lot more to be able to support your people, your friends, your family, everyone that is calling for you. But if you don't, all you're doing is you're just bleeding yourself dry. So what this series is going to be about is how do we tap into this foundation so that it can serve the rest of this? And just to let you know, this is sort of a foundational piece. Just checking in on a couple of thoughts here. This is a foundational piece, this program today. So my work, the way that I talk about it is about soul engineering, your business, your strategy, your meetings, your life. And what that's about is you want to create an environment in your workplace where people can bring their heart and soul, their passion in, even with all the crazy caca that's going on. You want to create engagement online where people are actually engaged, again, heart and soul. And then for yourself, if you are a business owner, you started that because you had a passion for this. How long has it been since you've truly allowed yourself to feel that and been able to feel that? How long since you've been able to bring your heart and soul into everything with all that has gone on this year? Because a lot of times, if you're the one supporting everybody else, you often find yourself, when you are feeling anxious, that, okay, who is there for me to turn to? There's really not anyone there. So what we want to do is help you build this so that you've got that solid foundation and that you can bring what you need to these. Does that make sense? So what we're going to do is each day, as I said, I may be bringing you some information. There'll be some ideas, some processes, really simple. The thing I should mention too, my background, where my bias comes from. My first career, I was a nuclear physicist, and believe it or not, that is relevant. Now, first of all, when I say it's not rocket science, you can believe me. I am a rocket scientist. This is simple stuff. When I was a physicist, I learned how to work with complex systems, and nothing more complex than life and organizations, and especially this year, life and work. And the trouble that is what most people do is they overcomplicate things. They try to, oh my God, think this, what this, and they over-analyze everything and just make it so complicated. And all you're doing then is you're pushing water. It's like you're fighting the world. The secret to complex systems and to change in complex systems is there are tiny little pressure points. These points, you put a little bit of pressure in and everything shifts. So that's the lens that I brought when I came from physics into organizational strategy, into coaching leaders and individuals to find those pressure points. And that's the lens that I have. I find I can intuitively find those and help my clients find those. And so that's what this is going to be about, is what are those tiny little pressure points that you can put little bits of effort in and everything starts to shift. Just to close things off, just one really quick example of when this happened was one time I felt a lot of overwhelm was when I got married. I had moved from 2,500 square foot house that was all my space to a smaller house where none of it was my space. And not only did I gain a spouse, I gained 2 stepsons and 2 cats. I hadn't had pets at the time. And it was like, at night, it was like Grand Central Station in our bedroom, because the kids would each have nightmares that sometime they'd come in snuggled and have to be carried back to the room. The cats would be running, chasing each other all night up over the bed. It was like I was just going, wow. And I had no place where I could breathe almost. And what got me through that is I had a black leather recliner. And what I did was I got up 15 minutes earlier. Usually got up at 6. I got up at 5:45, and I went and sat in that chair, and that was my space for 15 minutes. If the cats came on my lap, they had to go on the floor. That was for me to breathe. And that 15 minutes a day helped me breathe enough that I was able to adapt to all of the changes. I mean, they're wonderful changes, but change is stressful, whether it's good or bad. And it's looking for those simple leverage points. So if you're watching this after this as well, please drop in the comments some of the challenges that you have found in this time. If there's particular questions you have, it might spur some ideas. I've got a few of the shows planned out, not all of them. But so if you've got ideas, if you've got thoughts, if you've got things that you're challenged with, please put them in there, and I'll see if there's something that we can adapt. So tomorrow we're going to dive into some of this in terms of how you might actually be holding yourself back without realizing. You might actually be contributing to some of the pressure that you're feeling, and maybe some ways to be able to relieve that pressure. Thanks, folks. Enjoy this, and we will talk with you soon. Every weekday at noon Eastern Time, 1 o'clock Atlantic, right here. What's Next? We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.